After failing to retrieve Sasuke, Naruto was understandable sad. It was his failure. There was no way around that fact. Naruto was by no means strange to failure. Hell, failure was practically all he knew during his first 12 years of life, to the point where his successes were achieved through perseverance and never giving up almost exclusively. It took him twice as long as the rest of the kids in the orphanage to learn the basics of writing. It didn't amuse the staff in the slightest, but at least he wasn't alone. His slow learning curve, just a matter of not enough staff to do the job properly. You see, he was not the only troubled kid to be found in the overcrowded place, certainly not after the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked Konoha. Back then the public wasn't even aware that the Kyuubi was sealed instead of killed. Just like outside the highest-ranking shinobi in the village, everyone ignored that the village had 2 jinchurikis containing the Biju. It was sometime after his 4th birthday that the knowledge about the Kyuubi's survival and the individual it was sealed into was made public by some unknown party. With this information spread around Konoha in a matter of hours, the masses were not happy. That knowledge was like a kunai reopening old wounds, reminding them of the terror, the pain, and the void left by those whom were lost in the calamity. A few of the more unstable members in the village, mostly civilians, were caught planning on executing the kid whom in their eyes was the Kyuubi itself, were apprehended by the ENBU and in turn executed themselves under treason charges. This was made public along with a new law forbidding to talk about the Biju or its container to those that didn't already know. This law was made with the intention of not only protecting the village secret Jinchuriki, but to give Naruto a chance to live a normal life. The law succeeded partially. No outsiders knew who exactly the Jinchuriki was, but Naruto did not live a normal life. The glares, the whispers, parents telling their kids to stay away from him started immediately after the law came into effect. Shortly after that, he was moved from the orphanage to a small apartment where he spent the next 8 years of his life, living off of ramen eggs and milk and the occasional meal treat of the Sandaime Hokage. The less said about the academy, the better. His time after becoming a genin was an opportunity to experiment success again, the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu being his greatest success. It took effort, but he learned it using just the instructions on the scroll. It was as if the jutsu was tailor-made for him. Even if he didn't really understood half the words on it, he pulled it off. Naruto can say without a doubt that the time he spent with his genin team was the best of his life to date. Even with the endless chores the village calls D-rank missions, even with crazy Kirinin out for the blood of their drunken charge, even with snake-like creeps going after them in a forest of nightmares, even fighting giant sand tanukis on the head of a giant toad, especially while fighting giant sand tanukis on the head of giant toads. But then it happened, the death of old man Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, Itachi, and his Akatsuki partner after him, Sasuke beaten like a rag doll by the man whom he swore to kill, and then that Jinjutsu leaving him in a coma, utterly defeated, and him unable to help. It was the timely intervention of Pervy Sage that saved the day. They all lived to tell the tale. But that was the day that would mark the beginning of his greatest failure, Sasuke's defection to Orochimaru. Beaten and in a hospital, feeling all the weight of his failure, it was then that Jiraiya came to him telling him rather than asking about the training trip he had planned for them, and his advice, forget about Sasuke. Of course, Naruto agreed to train. If not for ramen, he would live to train, but he rejected the advice, saying that he would not listen, that it was not late to save Sasuke. According to the white-haired Sannin himself, to have 3 years before the snake it's ready to take possession of the Uchiha's body. Jiraiya didn't agree with him. Then, the travel began, and after a couple of days away from Konoha, Jiraiya repeated his advice, much more forcefully this time. It was more an ultimatum than an advice. Being the stubborn person he is, Naruto took the challenge to change the Sannin's mind about the matter. They made a bet. If Naruto could land a single blow on his new sensei during a sparring match against him, he wins, and he would receive the training from the Sannin, and after they were done, he would look for his teammate and fulfill his promise to Sakura, proving how amazing he is as a shinobi in the process. If he loses, he would have to abandon the idea of actively looking for Sasuke and accept any order from his sensei regarding his training. The result was humbling. In extreme, Jiraiya taught him a lesson that day. No amount of luck will make you win a bet with 0% chances of success. For he showed Naruto the abysmal gap in skill between an S-class shinobi seriously intending to win and a stubborn genin. In the end, it took 17 hours for the genin to admit defeat, and the worst part was that the only thing he managed to do to Jiraiya was keep him with an empty stomach. Unable to stand on feet, hungry, almost without chakra, with small chakra burns on his arms produced by the use of his tenant's red chakra, literally nothing worked against Jiraiya. The Rasengan he is so proud about, the hundreds upon hundreds of bunshins trying to overwhelm him with numbers, even a couple of toads made no difference. Jiraiya barely even moved more than 2 steps at a time. His punches were barely strong enough to dispel the clones, or to make the original aware that he knew he was the source of the seemingly infinite amount of punches and kicks. It was obvious he was conserving his energy. He didn't use a single jutsu in 17 hours. Yet, he was completely untouched. Just say it, kid, Jiraiya spoke, like it was the first time he was saying those words, but in reality, he already lost count. I haven't lost yet, old man. Admitting defeat, Naruto realized, would mean breaking his promise to Sakura, and he does not go back on his word and never breaks a promise. Carefully analyzing the short blonde, Jiraiya decided he would make a final bet. You lost, Naruto. You don't have the strength to throw a single punch left in you. And to prove it, I'll just sit down here without moving. If you hit me, you win. But if I count to 10 and you don't, you lose. Do we have a deal? Standing just a couple of steps away from Naruto, Jiraiya was just waiting for the blonde to accept. No deal, you'll just count really fast. Naruto wasn't expecting Jiraiya to do so, but he was trying to gather enough strength to actually punch Jiraiya. It was his only chance. Jiraiya stretched his hand and brushed his index finger at the side of the blonde's mouth. 5 hand seals later, there was an old, small toad between them. Jiraiya-chan, are you two still at this? The toad asked. After the blonde tried to use the amphibian's help to win the bet, they spread the words among the clan, and the old toad did not look amused to be summoned in this situation. Sorry, Fukasaka-sama. We will be putting an end to it now. If Naruto agrees, said Jiraiya, getting the toad, now known as Fukasaku's interest. And how do you propose to do that, Jiraiya-chan? Asked the small creature. Simple. I'll sit down in front of Naruto, and if after 10 seconds he cannot hit me, I win. Naruto, still not feeling the strength to throw a hit, said, I won't trust someone summoned by pervy sage to do the counting. Very well, Jiraiya, still sounding as confident as ever, conceded, summon one of your own to do the counting. It would only be on his favor if the blonde agrees to it. TCH. Fine. Caught on his bluff, the genin had no option but to accept, unable to stall any further, but already gathering some of his tenant's chakra to help him with the punch. He had practically won by now. Okay then, but don't make a habit of calling me for such mundane things, Jiraiya-chan. The old toad seemed more amused than anything, but still felt the need to remind the toad sage that he was not a toad he can call often, due to his standing among the toad clan. With a smile and a small nod, Jiraiya of the legendary 3 sat down in front of the genin. 1, 2, 3-inch Naruto was ready. The chakra in his belly was flowing on his system, and he was guiding it to his right arm. With more effort than he though was needed, his fingers closed, and his hand made a fist for 5-inch, but the fist was heavy. It felt like he was lifting one of Rock Lee's leg weights instead of his hand's 6, 7. Finally, he managed to get his hand close to his chest, intending to unleash the most powerful punch of the day on the legendary pervert. But 8, 9. The chakra on his arm was burning him from the inside out, like the first time he made a bet, like when he was racing against time to master the Rasengan 10. His hand still refusing to obey his commands, his body unable to strike. After 17 hours, the genin used most of his enormous reserves of chakra on countless clones, forming hundreds of Rasengans. He had a rare case of chakra exhaustion and chakra saturation. Simultaneously, his muscles locked his arm close to his chest, unable to move even a little. You lost, Naruto-chan. As the words of the old small toad hit him with the full force of reality, he fell to the ground, totally exhausted, totally defeated. I can't. No, this isn't right. I. I made a promise to Sakura-chan. The disbelief on Naruto's words was evident. Moving his head to glare at the white-haired man, he finally said, "Please, pervy sage. I. I made a promise. You can't make me break it. Please," he was clearly begging. He was unable to deny the fact that he was defeated, that he was bound by his own word. But now, for the first time, two promises of his were conflicting with each other. He really wanted to keep his promise to Sakura-chan, even if it means that in the end she will have Sasuke. And he won't have her. At least his best friend would be back in the village. And at least they would be happy. I hope this teaches you, kid. Jiraiya's voice was soft, caring, and compassionate. They filled the young Jinchuriki with hope. To not make promises you can't keep, he didn't understood how such harsh words could be spoken in such a gentle way. Jiraiya-chan is only looking out for you, Naruto-chan. Fukasaku's words carried the same gentle tone as Jiraiya's, but they were what finally made Naruto understand. This is just another failure to add to his long and seemingly ever-growing list. With his eyelids closing and losing consciousness, the only thing he could think was sorry. Sakura-chan. 0x0x0. Was it necessary to do this, Jiraiya-chan? Fukasaku asked to the sage while looking at the unconscious form of the younger toad summoner. The kid was behaving the same way I did after Orochimaru left Konoha. I might not be the best, most caring godfather out there, but as Jiraiya spoke, his eyes fixed on the horizon, looking on something that cannot be seen, remembering his own past experiences, his own failures, remembering all the chaos, dead, and suffering his old friend caused in this world, remembering the time he could have prevented so many deaths just by killing the monster Orochimaru became. That one time when he escaped Konoha, remembering how he missed the date for Naruto's birthday to not lose the tail of the snake, which he did, remembering that. The day the blonde was born, he was supposed to be there, lending an apparently unneeded set of eyes on Kushina's seal. Remembering that if he had choose to stop going after Orochimaru, maybe Naruto would still have his parents, and his sensei would still be alive. So many scenarios ran on his mind, all of them useless. This was reality. At least my godson won't have to suffer for the actions of a former friend. What are you talking about, Jiraiya-chan? Asked Fukasaku, not knowing what started this whole mess. Of course, he had no way of knowing the running similarities between master and student. Jiraiya let out a breath. He knew he had some explaining to do. 0x0x0. Naruto awoke the next day, alone in the camp that Jiraiya must have set the day before. It was close to midday according to the sun, but the pervert was nowhere to be found. His body aching, his chakra pathways burning, he was defenseless at the moment, not to mention his face devoid of life. Not even in his sleep could he forget the beating he received yesterday, and the bet with Jiraiya. What the hell was he supposed to say to Sakura-chan? Sorry, but I can't keep my promise because of a bet I made with a perverted old man? And what about Sasuke? Was he supposed to let the snake use his bod like a suit? To just abandon him? But after the other day, what choice did he have? Welcome back to the land of the living brat. Jiraiya's voice brought him out of his musings. He had some firewood in one hand and a hair in the other. The hair reminded him that the last time he had eaten something was probably more than a day ago. He was hungry. Why? He asked with a serious tone of voice. He will break a promise for the first time on his life, he decided. The Sannin answer will determine if he keeps his promise to Sakura-chan, or if he keeps his word to him instead. You mean why I don't want you chasing after a boy? The grin in Jiraiya's face could be practically heard. You knew it was there without actually having to look at him. Angrily, Naruto turned his face so he could glare at his master. It seemed to have the desired effect, and Jiraiya's face went for a well-natured teasing one to the face of a shinobi who survived through 2 shinobi wars, but he still did not talk. I'm serious, Jiraiya, he said, without adding any nickname or title. He just wanted to know. Jiraiya during the duel made it clear he held nothing back in order to win. He made a point. He wanted to know why. You know, Jiraiya started, his face still the same mask of seriousness. Orochimaru and me used to be teammates, right? He asked, as if he didn't know it already. You, Tsunade Bakon, and that bastard snake were all students of the old man. Everyone knows that. Naruto was irritated. What was the point he was trying to make? Just like that pink-haired girl, Sasuke, and you were Kakashi's students, right? Jiraiya really didn't want to explain this in detail. It is still painful, but to him it was evident. Not the same, you pervert. Naruto replied, getting irritated with his teacher's antics. None of us is a backstabbing, murderous bastard like the snake. You are right. Sasuke, it's a chest stabber. Jiraiya, for his part, was getting tired. He didn't want to dispel it to the blonde, but he will if it's necessary. Sasuke, it's on the same road Orochimaru chose. And if he does survive his former teammate, he will be as much as a monster as Orochimaru, if not worse. It was not Sasuke, it was the curse seal. Naruto defended Sasuke. It had to be. Sasuke would never try to kill him like that if not for the curse mark. Did you knew? There is another person who has the curse mark in Konoha, kid? This time Jiraiya sounded amused, but internally he was suffering. In the end, he would have to share his past with the brat and hope he learns from his mistakes, but she doesn't go around stabbing people in the chest. Despite her quirks, she is one of the most loyal kunoichi in the Leaf, and she never let the seal influence her. And her seal was applied 10 years ago, so she had time to stab a couple of people. Does she have the second stage of the freaking seal? Naruto countered. He was getting tired of Jiraiya comparing his murderous former teammate to Sasuke. No, she does not. And it does not matter. Jiraiya was calm while speaking a total opposite of his student. If she did, she would not use it. The seal is still activated by the will of the bearer. Lifting a finger, he continued. You have something far more powerful than Orochimaru's curse seal at your disposal. And from your report to Tsunade, you used your tenant's power to match the stage 2 of the cursed mark. Am I right? Jiraiya asked. Naruto simply answered with a nod of his head. The Kyuubi, it's said to be a being of pure hatred able to flatten a mountain with a single swing of a tail. Yet, you showed restraint and didn't stroke a fatal blow, like Sasuke, when he pierced your left lung while aiming for your hearth. It's not the same. Naruto protested with some rage. Calm down, Naruto. Jiraiya took a kunai from his robes and started to skin the hair. It's true. It's not exactly the same. Both seals provide the user with tainted chakra. The factor that matters is what the user does with said chakra. It says a lot about you, all of it good. And about Sasuke, it says nothing positive. With a single hand, Jiraiya lit the wood he brought on fire, putting the hair near it to cook, and continued. How I see things, Sasuke could be Orochimaru Jr. They are both the same, Jiraiya said without looking at him, the hair slowly starting to change color with the fire. The hell are you talking about? I told you, Sasuke, it's nothing like that damn snake. Naruto insisted, his rage evidently on his voice and his face becoming slightly more feral. He was considered a prodigy, he lost his family as a child, and he wants power. Tell me, kid, who I am talking about? Jiraiya asked, rotating the hair so it doesn't burn. A little annoyed, Naruto responded, Sasuke, everyone always talking about how great he is. Even now, Jiraiya reminds him of it, even while trying to make him forget the idea of bringing him back. Chuckling, Jiraiya responded, wrong. I'm talking about Orochimaru. That changed Naruto's facial expression from rage to confusion, so he pressed the point. Orochimaru and I were kids too. It was a long time ago, but we were young, just like you and Sasuke are now. He wasn't always the amoral, crazy murderer and plotter he is now, kid. I don't know exactly when he started to change, but he changed, just like Sasuke. You cannot be sure he will end like Orochimaru, just like that. Naruto protested. Sure, they may have started in life in a similar way, but it does not guarantee they will end the same way. True, but they are not the only ones that are similar in my team and yours, kid. Jiraiya this time seemed a bit tired. He looked from the cooking hair to his apprentice. Kid, I don't think I've told you this, but you remind me a lot of myself when I was your age. You have guts, kid. This surprised Naruto, somewhat unsure what does it have to do with what they were talking until now. We are so much alike that when Orochimaru left, I went after him to convince him to come back. Smiling in a teasing way, Jiraiya continued, I wasn't stabbed in the chest, but I too was left injured while the bastard made a run for it. Letting Naruto process what he just said, he waited a minute before speaking again. Kid, you have done enough for Sasuke. If you continue looking for him, you will lose other things in life, the way I did. Like what? Naruto asked. He had no one but his team, just Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke. And the Ikarakus, if the pervy sage says he reminds him of a younger self, he could accept it, but like Sasuke and Orochimaru, they are not the same person. Like the night the Kyuubi attacked Kid, I was supposed to be in Konoha, but instead I was chasing the snake. Minato could still be alive, as could be many other people. It wasn't much, but for the first time the legendary shinobi allowed himself to show despair, hoping to get into that thick skull of his student. Minato? As in Namake's Minato? The fourth Hokage? Naruto asked the man who sealed the Kyuubi on him, his idol. Even after sealing a Biju and fucking his life, he was still awesome. Yes, kid, and not only that. There are so many other things I could have done instead of chasing Orochimaru. I could have completed the Sage Arts training, Jiraiya said, but clearly exaggerating on the last part. Not like Naruto know what the Sage Arts entail. It is not common knowledge. But we are not the same pervy sage, Naruto countered. I have no family, but Team 7 if I stopped looking for Sasuke. I would be abandoning my family. Naruto just wanted Jiraiya to release him from the bed, so he could keep his promise to Sakura-chan. How old are you, Naruto? Jiraiya asked, turning back to the hair on the fire. I'm 13, responded Naruto, not sure why it was important all of a sudden. You have other friends in Konoha, right? Even if they are not as close as you and Sasuke? Naruto just nodded his head, still unsure of what the Sannin was trying to say. You are so young, Naruto. You will grow strong. I'll make sure of it. Naruto just smiled at that. Yes, he wanted to be strong enough to protect his precious people, and maybe you will find love. It could be with that pink-haired girl or not. You can form a family, Naruto. If you end up becoming Hokage, you will have the whole village to protect. Explained Jiraiya, trying to make Naruto understand what he could gain by abandoning the idea of going after his teammate. You will gain more friends, love. Hell, even may become a father at some point. Jiraiya extended his arms, making a big circle with them. And you will leave all of them to go find someone whom does not want to be found. This time Jiraiya pointed an accusatory finger at Naruto. It won't be fair to your other friends, friends that are loyal to you and will fight by your side. To try and find an old friend, what could happen to Sakura or Kakashi or any of the friends that you have at Konoha? If you are not there when they need you, Naruto, protect what you have, chase your happiness, not Sasuke, finished Jiraiya, smiling at the blonde. Naruto was genuinely touched by Jiraiya's words, but still not convinced. I'm not sure if I'll ever have a family, Sennin. I don't know if anyone will want to be with me. If they find about the fox, said Naruto, clearly sad, but almost accepting his fate. A bit ironical if you asked Hyuga Neji about it. You don't know that, kid. As I said, you are young. Only 13, many things can happen in a lifetime, Jiraiya said, putting a hand in Naruto's shoulder. Besides, stay around me, and you will learn your way with the ladies, Naruto. Jiraiya, always confident on his ability to seduce any woman, but the one that truly mattered, gave him a smile. But why do I have to choose, sensei? Let it be known, Uzumaki is not one with lack of ambition. I could have friends, family, and Sasuke all in Konoha, Naruto said with a smile. It is possible, Naruto. It can happen, said Jiraiya with a smile. You mean that you are liberating me from the bet? Naruto was excited to have convinced his sensei, but this victory was short-lived as he watched Jiraiya shake his head. Naruto, you made a bet with me, and I expect you to carry on with your end of the bargain. Jiraiya's words confused the blonde. His sensei was sending mixed signals. But it is still possible for Sasuke to come back to Konoha on his own will. And if he does, maybe, that is the best way for him to go back home. Explained Jiraiya. Sasuke is his own person. He is similar to Orochimaru, but not the same. So the chance exists, but the decision is his to make, not yours, Naruto. It was never yours. Finally, the sage took the hair off the fire and offered it to his student. Receiving the cooked animal from his sensei, and before taking the first bite, Naruto made his mind. He just hoped that he could be forgiven for breaking his word this one time. I just hope the team hurries before Sakura-chan finds out about our bet, Sennin. Chapter 2. Unable to resist. Even with Naruto's healing factor, it took him a couple of days to recover enough to be able to move again after the duel. Not one to waste time, Jiraiya gave Naruto an atlas containing some of the most accurate maps available Konoha. The objective was, of course, fix Naruto's ignorance on everything that it is not inside the Leaf's walls. Naruto didn't complain at first. Since he could not train, learning practical things seemed the next best thing to do. It was almost like training in his opinion. He still found the book to be extremely boring. And of course, he made his displeasure known to his master multiple times. The first night of camping was for Jiraiya's amusement, a verbal test of the knowledge Naruto should have acquired during the day. Naruto does not like tests. They were the bane of his existence in the academy. His attention problems always made it difficult to sit still and listen to the class lectures, or he was simply unable to read an entire page without getting distracted by a random fly in the room. Yes, written tests were the stuff his nightmares are made of. However, while camping near to a road that appeared largely underutilized, even flies refused to use the road and distract him. He managed to focus on the book on hand and study about the country, its cities, and natural marks. After Jiraiya's short test, they ate a simple stew of hair provided by a healthy ecosystem of the land of Fire Naruto, and then went to sleep. While the young Jinchuriki needed to sleep and recover from their duel, Jiraiya was awake by the fire of their camp. Looking at the flames with a smile, he could not believe that he managed to convince the genin to stop the chase of his teammate. And as part of the bet, now Naruto cannot refuse any order as long as it concerns his training. Smirking the sage though of the things he would teach his student, the many things his previous students refused to learn because their views of the world, but Naruto will be different, because the strong-headed blonde always does his best to keep his promises. Taking out his map of the next town down the road, Jiraiya marked a series of spots on it. Yes, the best hot springs in the city. The places where he polished his own stealth-related skills. They will do a nice training field for Naruto. The next morning, Naruto awoke feeling none of the pain from the last 2 days, completely refreshed and ready to start his training. With a smile, he jumped out of his sleeping bag. Judging the time by the sun, he determined it must be around 7 a.m. Looking around the camp, he noticed the Sannin still sleeping, hardly a surprise. During his travels with the legendary ninja, he noticed that Jiraiya is not a morning person. One day, while on the mission to find and retrieve Tsunade, after they found her and him and his fellow blonde made the Rasengan bet, he simply decided to let the white-haired man sleep and see how long it took him to awake on his own. It turns out that if allowed, and without any need to awake, Jiraiya could sleep past midday easily. He and his master were not on a mission per se, but that does not mean that Jiraiya can just sleep all he wanted. The whole reason of the trip, at least on Naruto's eyes, it's training. Training he won't get if Jiraiya doesn't wake up. Hey, wake up, pervy sage. Approaching to the sleeping form of his master, Naruto kicked Jiraiya's foot with enough force to bother the old man. As the sage opens his eyes slowly and with obvious annoyance at being forcefully waken up this early in the morning, Jiraiya looked at the sky looking for the position of the sun. Narrowing his eyes, he glared at his blonde companion. Damn you, kid. This was not the way or the time to wake a respected shinobi like himself. It's time to train Arrow Sennin. Naruto could not look happier with himself at the moment. Finally able to train, to become stronger, this was what the blonde lives for. So you already had breakfast then? Jiraiya was a bit hungry, but he really wanted to sleep 5 more minutes. No. I haven't eaten anything yet. Not that it seemed all that important, at least from Naruto's point of view. He could eat after some training. Come on, we can eat something after some training. Okay, kid, Jiraiya said while pointing his finger to the forest. There is a river 2 kilometers away in that direction. Run there and bring us some fresh fish. The smirk on the sage did nothing to hide his amusement or his pride. In one move, he would get more sleep, food, and he would be training his student. Yeah, he was a genius. You were just trying to distract me from my training. That's not fair. Naruto, for his part, saw right through his teacher's ploy and was not going to fall for it. Or so he thought. How is a morning run and survival training distracting you? Countered Jiraiya. It would be good for his student to run that relatively short distance. Not to mention that acquiring food in the wild is a skill every shinobi must have. From lowly genins like Naruto to mighty S-class ninja like himself. It's a skill of universal value. Besides, breakfast it's the most important meal of the day. Running alone counts as training. Catching fish it's something even civilians must learn, not to mention that by the time you are back here, you too will be hungry. Now run. Grumbling about lazy old men, Naruto took off in direction to the forest. It took Naruto longer than he expected to catch the fishes. They were just so slippery and fast while in the water, a hard-to-catch prey, at least for him. But now he was running back to the camp. As much as he hated to admit it, Jiraiya was right. He was hungry, luckily for him, and he had 6 big fishes ready to be cooked. After a few seconds, he got out of the forest and could already see the camp. It was exactly as when he left, his sleeping bag close to the bonfire, empty. Equally close to the bonfire was the not-so-empty sleeping bag of Jiraiya, with him still inside, sleeping. When he arrived to the camp, he noticed they had no more firewood to cook their breakfast. A blonde eyebrow twitching in exasperation, Naruto could simply not hold himself from vocalizing his displeasure to his teacher. "What's the problem with you, Ero-Sennin? Can't even get some wood?" He was not going to stand for this. His lazy sensei was going to pull his own weight. Without moving from his comfortable-looking sleeping bag, Jiraiya just said, "My problem is that I have an ungrateful kid to train." Naruto, now sitting, Jiraiya pointed out to Naruto, "You kid, need more than just combat training to become a shinobi. You need to learn to plan ahead. Just look at what you just did. You just returned from the forest. Had you checked the camp before going, you would have known that we needed wood. And you could not be bothered to get your ass away from the camp to get some wood. Did you? So what, he forgot to check if the needed wood. Big deal. He is not the only person in the camp. He should not be doing all the chores alone. If I did that, what would you learn, kid?" Jiraiya insisted. This was not only him being lazy, he was also making a good point. Naruto needs to pay more attention to his surroundings. He needs to stop and think before running ahead and do whatever task needs to be done. And considering who the boy is, what he has sealed on his stomach, and the people chasing after it, the kid must learn fast. "It sounds to me like you are just being lazy." Naruto crossed his arms and looked away from Jiraiya. He won't let the old pervert take advantage of him. Besides, your excuse, it's kind of lame, he added in the end. But it is not an excuse. You really need to develop these skills. Sometimes, hiding, waiting, and observing is the best tactic to use in battle. "You sound like Shikamaru now," Naruto scoffed. "Isn't that Shikamaru, kid, the only one who got promoted in the Chunin exams?" Jiraiya smiled a bit at that. He was cornering Naruto again. Soon he would go back to the forest for wood. "Yes, I don't know why Bakon promoted him though. He only hide and run, and in the end he even gave up the match." Naruto was happy for Shikamaru's promotion. Really, he just could not figure out what he did that was so impressive to warrant a promotion. "I heard about that match actually. He was fighting a wind user chick from Suna, right?" Without waiting for the blonde to confirm it, Jiraiya continued. She already knew how his jutsu worked from the preliminary matches and kept distance from him. He hid behind the trees on the arena. He waited until the sun extended his jutsu's reach. The time he waited, he thought of what to do to catch her. And from what I heard, he won the match, but he said he didn't have chakra for another fight. Only a fool enters a fight he knows he can't win. Jiraiya laid down on his sleeping bag again and used his left hand to point Naruto towards the forest. "Now go and get some wood. I'm hungry." "Well, I'm not going. If you are hungry, you can go get the wood yourself, pervy sage." "Naruto, can you tell me the terms of our bet again?" "I told you, I won't go after Sasuke already. Now go get some wood, you lazy old man." Naruto stomped on the ground and pointed with his index finger towards the forest. "But didn't we agreed on something else on that bet? Didn't we agree that the winner of our spar match would determine how your training goes?" Jiraiya was smiling while looking at the blonde. "I won, didn't I? And let me remind you, that means you have to obey any order I give you as long as it is for your training." Now Jiraiya was laughing. "You are basically my slave now, kid." Naruto's pupils seemed to disappear, leaving only the white of his eyes, and his jaw did its best to reach the ground. His arms lost all force and hung from his shoulders. He had completely forgotten about that part of the bet. When he included that, he thought he was going to make the old pervert spill every jutsu he knew for him. He thought himself a genius for thinking of that. He did not consider the possibility of losing. He did not plan ahead. And he does not go back on his word. Tish, this is not training. This is a chore. There was a loophole in the bargain. That much was obvious, even to him. If it is not for training, he does not have to obey. "Kid, hate to break it to you, But gathering what it's considered survival training, Jiraiya pointed out, he too was aware of the loophole in the bargain. Except, he can literally turn every aspect of Naruto's life into some form of training life. It's training kid now go, I'm hungry. With his eyes fixed on the ground, the young genin walked back to the forest. This was his life now, the slave of a perv, the slave of a super pervert. After cooking breakfast for Jiraiya and him, he finally got some training. Jiraiya started him on a new taijutsu style, the Gamma no Kyumite. The style was based on maximizing the range of the fighter, making punches and kicks go further away than it seemed possible for the user. It was a style based on deception. He was still struggling to get the basic katas down, and his arms and legs were hurting, especially in the joints. But according to Jiraiya, it is normal for beginners to feel some pain since the style uses muscles that are difficult to train. That was in the morning. For lunch, he was forced to go hunting again and to cook for his master, again, under the excuse of survival training. After lunch, Jiraiya told him that from now on, whenever they were not in a city, he was to look out for food, cook breakfast for both of them, then train his new taijutsu until he awakens. After lunch, they took on the road again. Apparently, the next town will be their next training spot for the next 2 weeks. Much to Naruto's irritation, they walked all the way to the next town. It took them all the afternoon to get there. So when they arrived, they had no sunlight to do anything else, so they looked for a hotel to spend the night. His master gave him a new book once they were on their shared room. This time, instead of an atlas, he got a book that described the different plants and herbs indigenous of the Land of Fire. The book described in detail the properties of a selection of medicinal and poisonous plants natives of their country, and curiously, it also pointed out which plants could be used to season the different species of animals that can be caught on the forest of the country. Erosenin was trying to make him learn to cook. The team. Worst of all, the pervert escaped, and he was sure that if he were to look for him, he would find the sage in one brothel or a bar. The next morning, Naruto woke up ready to train again, so he tried to get his master out of bed, only to be informed while on a city the only thing different on his schedule was that he was not required to look for food. So he spent half of his morning practicing the katas he was showed yesterday while on the road. Since they did not require too much space, he stayed inside. The taijutsu style is supposed to be secret or something. When Jiraiya finally woke up, he used the bathroom, showed him a new combination for him to practice, and then the pervert went back to bed. His real nightmare started in the afternoon of the same day. Jiraiya informed him that while they were on the city, he was to develop his infiltration and stealth skills via the trial and error method. That was not the bad part. The bad part was that he had to infiltrate the local hot spring, spy on the women's side of it, and take notes on the body types of the costumers. He was basically ordered to do his master's creative research for his books. The nightmare was that everything else made sense on an infiltration and espionage type of mission. In other words, Naruto was unable to refuse because he was bound by his word to obey every order the pervert gave him regarding his training. So here he was, on the roof of a building close to a hot spring place, just high enough to look on the other side of the wall, armed only with a notepad and a pen, looking at the women body on the other side. Oh, and he has to take notes. Let's see. That brunette over there. I guess her boobs are at least C cups. Oh, that red hair is definitely a DCU. Hey, is that kid in orange spying on us? He was spotted. Yeah, he is definitely looking this way. Let's go teach him a lesson. Now what? Though the genin, he was never on this end of an angry mob of females. In an instant, his self-preservation instinct kicked in, and he made a run for it. He jumped from the roof and hid himself on an alley and waited all the time, hearing yells from the angry mob, demanding him to show up and take up his punishment. In the street, he could see the angry women looking for him, stopping people and talking to them, without a doubt asking if they saw him. Damn you, Erosenin. One of them turned towards his alley. Wait, did he though that, or did he said that? I found the peeping Tom girls. He said it. On the roofs, Jiraiya could do nothing but laugh. It was the most pathetic attempt to research he'd ever seen. Hopefully the boy won't be punished so badly considering how young he is. If not, at least he will understand why orange is such a bad color for shinobi. Looking through his telescope's lens, Jiraiya looked at the scene on the alley, and it seemed that the mob decided to judge Naruto like an adult. It seems the boy will learn through negative reinforcements. Jiraiya's voice carried pity born from first-hand experience. But hey, he turned out all right. I mean, his infiltration and stealth skills are second to none in the continent. And he has a bank account with 7 zeros. He could have easily ended worse. Wait, why are they taking his pants off? And what's the deal with that rusty knife? Yeah, they are definitely giving him the full adult sentence. Finally, Naruto managed to free himself from the hands of his assailants and escape to the streets of the city. Somehow, Jiraiya thought that the runt ran pretty fast for a man who forgot to take up his pants. This counts as escape training, I guess. The legendary ninja was having the time of his life laughing at his student's misfortune. He only wished he had popcorn. Did I lost them? Asked the blonde while hiding on yet another alley. This time he was looking around for any signs of angry females. After almost 1 hour, he finally lost the last of the mob that was chasing him. His eye was black and his cheek was inflamed. He had various hematomas on his body. He was somewhat willing to accept the righteous fury of the angry mob. After all, they were the wronged ones, and he was the criminal. But all sense of justice was replaced by fear when a woman bowed that rusty knife, and he heard the words he dared not to even think of. He knew that what they wanted to do to him was beyond retribution, and he would not pay a price that high. So he just ran, hiding in an alley watching people pass down the street while waiting for the sun to go down on the horizon, fearing every female he saw as if they were a demon sent by Kami to make sure he left no descendants on this word. However, he could also remember the brunette with the C cups, the redhead with the D cups, and maybe it was just his imagination, but he could swear there was a blue-haired girl with double Ds. I better don't tell Pervy Sage about that, the blonde thought. It was bad enough that he was being forced to spy on unsuspecting innocent woman. He does not have to like it. Noticing that the yellow orb was finally down, he decided that it was time to make a run for it and return to the hotel room to give the old pervert a piece of his mind. Naruto entered the hotel room. He shared with his teacher holding his orange jacket forming a ball in his arms. It seems some women recognized him on the way, so he decided to play it safe and not use his jacket until he was in the security of their room. "Hey Pervy Sage, you there?" asked Naruto, looking around the room for any signs of his teacher. After a moment, he decided that his master was still outside, in a bar or something. Sighing, he left his jacket on his backpack and decided to go out and get some food. With some luck, the city would have a good ramen stand. He walked on the streets of the city. He didn't know, looking at the buildings, he noticed that they all were Eastern style, and all of them were very old. Unlike Konoha, where they have many new buildings, and many of them were more of a mix between Eastern and Western style. Of course, many of those buildings were replacing old ones that were most likely destroyed during the invasion. Noticing a ramen stand, Naruto hurried to the place with a smile. It has been almost a week since he last had ramen. He was missing the taste of his favorite meal so bad now. Looking at the menu printed on the wall behind the bar of the stand, he immediately knew what he wanted. 3 miso ramen, please," he said enthusiastically, his mouth already salivating in anticipation. He was about to get a piece of heaven. How could he not? "Sure thing, kid." The ramen chef was a mature, red-headed woman with large breasts. She could not be the same, right? The woman was staring at him, as if recognizing him. "Say, kid, don't I know you from somewhere?" Oh crap. Yes, she was the same one from the hot springs. "I don't think so. My teacher and me just got on town today," he said, trying to make her forget about him. Good thing he left his jacket back at the hotel room. Otherwise, he would be doomed. "You sure? You seem so familiar for some reason." The woman insisted, her eyes scanning his face, as if comparing him to the other faces on his memories. Then all of a sudden, her face turned on to one of recognition, her right hand wandering below the bar, dividing her workstation from the costumers. "Looking for something? You know, there are not many blondes in this town. And the only other one around your age that I know of is the pervert we caught spying on us in the hot springs earlier today." Her right hand raised violently, holding a familiar-looking rusty knife. That's how he knew he had to run. Running for his life for the second time today, he turned his head to look behind just to confirm that the red-headed woman was indeed on his tail, swinging her rusty old knife as if trying to catch him with it, while yelling, "I know all of the ramen chefs in the town, kid. I'll call them all and make sure no one sells you any ramen." at him while he left her behind with tears falling from his eyes, the red-headed woman would never know how effective her threats were for him. For now Naruto knew that he would not be able to get a taste of the glorious ramen while they stayed on this town. After losing the angry ramen chef, the blonde decided to not risk getting caught again and entered a sushi place and eaten there. Even if sushi was not his favorite meal by far, at least he could enjoy the lack of castration threats. Yeah, sushi was safe. With his hunger sated, he returned to the hotel room, intending on getting some very well-deserved sleep. However, as soon as he was inside, he found his sensei drinking sake without a care in the world. "You old pervert." Naruto pointed his index finger at his teacher. "It was all his fault. Because of you, no one in this town wants to sell me any ramen." "What do you mean?" asked Jiraiya in an innocent tone of voice. And so Naruto told him his story, him getting caught, the angry mob, the rusty-looking knife, the ramen chef, everything. "I don't think it was my fault that you got caught," was all Jiraiya had to say. They have been 3 weeks on same city, following the same routine as the first day they arrived. For Naruto, this of course meant taijutsu in the morning. The afternoon was divided in two initially. First, it was stealth and infiltration practice. The second part of his afternoon was to escape from an angry mob of furious females. He was banned from all ramen bars, a couple of restaurants, and one souvenir shop, all of them owned by females, and that was only the ones he was aware of before that time he went shopping. He blamed it on Jiraiya, for the blonde. His master was the source of all the misfortunes he has been ever since they first entered the city, but the old pervert always put up the same excuse: "It's not my fault if you get caught." He endured the chases for 2 weeks before finally admitting to himself that he needed help, and Kami knew he didn't want it to, but he ended asking for advice to the one person he knew has the experience as a spy: Jiraiya. Jiraiya of course laughed. His student was tired of running for his life. It took longer than he anticipated. The blonde was so stubborn he was starting to suspect he was a secret masochist, but at last he could share his knowledge on the art of stealth. He started by asking the blonde some questions. That the Jinchuriki responded very well. He did give wrong answers, but it was to be expected. After verbally teaching Naruto for a couple of hours, he made the blonde admit that the colors of his clothes was what was giving away his position most of the times. The day after the lecture, the pair went shopping for a new uniform. It would have been much easier if Naruto wasn't banned from so many shops. But they did got him his clothes. Now Naruto sported a dark gray jacket, a maroon t-shirt, and black pants. He still had his old shinobi sandals since there was nothing wrong with them. That was not the only thing they got for him. Now Naruto was the owner of an orange yukata. The reason behind this was so he could blend better on civilian environments, such as festivals or formal meetings that Jiraiya said he may take him to. The third week, Naruto was met with partial success. The first day after getting his new uniform, the blonde remained undetected for 30 minutes before retreating and show his notes to Jiraiya, but he could not find his perverted teacher anywhere. He looked on every hot spring, every bar, the restaurants he was not banned from, but he could not find Jiraiya anywhere. He went back to their hotel room hoping he was there, but that wasn't the case, so Naruto spent what was left of that afternoon practicing the Gamma Kumite while waiting for Jiraiya to come back. "You are doing it wrong, kid. You are supposed to move your shoulders with the rest of the arm to get maximum reach." To say Jiraiya scared him that day was an understatement. He talked directly behind of him, no more than a meter away. "Where have you been, Ero-senin? I've been looking for you all day," he asked back then. "TCH. I know. I was following you around all day too, kid." That was the day he started his training on searching skills. Jiraiya told him that now he must spend 1.5 hours undetected and take notes for him to check, but he would have to find him first. And Jiraiya could be surprisingly hard to find for someone with such a unique appearance. It took him hours to find the legendary shinobi. The old pervert knew how to disappear when he wanted to. However, he was working hard to find him faster and faster every time. In the 7 days they have been training this way, he managed to diminish the time used from 3.5 hours to 3 hours and 5 minutes. The old pervert encouraged him that he was using the same level of skill to hide all week. If that was true, then he has an accurate way to measure his progress. He remembered the first time he tried to find Jiraiya. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. He looked all over the town, bars, brothels, hot springs, the usual places, but to no avail. In the end, he found him while double-checking one of the bars. He was actually disguised as a waiter, and the disguise wasn't even that good, just a normal uniform and glasses. He would kick himself for looking over such an obvious disguise. At this stage of his training, he was learning to look for suspicious individuals or little things out of place, and he wasn't even good at it. He still had a long path ahead of him, but he was happy just to be walking it. In the hotel room, Jiraiya looked over the notes Naruto had taken yesterday. They were as uninspired as ever. They only contained descriptions and behaviors of the women he spies on. They were accurate and factual, but they were not like his masterfully created pieces of literature like his own notes, and his notes were still just unrefined first thoughts. The boy was getting better on his stealth, and hopefully learning to be patient in the process. Bitterly, he recognized that spying on women would still be like a chore he assigned to his student. But in time, he will appreciate the time he spends on stealth more than the time he spends trying to find him. It is, after all, just a matter of time, be it days, be it weeks, or even months. Puberty was fast approaching his young student, and with it, the joys of the flesh. If he does things right, Naruto will leave the pranks behind like a bad habit from his childhood, and maybe, just maybe, will come to admire the female population of the world half as much as him. Looking at the calendar on the wall, he realized that they have been almost a month in this town. They must leave soon. Nothing good will come out of staying on the same place for too long. The kid would make unnecessary bonds with people outside the village, or worse, the Akatsuki could get on their trail. There was no clock in the room, but a shinobi of his caliber doesn't really need one all that much just to know that at this time of day the kid should still be on what he calls stealth training. The day he gets the boy he is peeping will be the day he gives him the official title of pervert. That will be a day to remember. Anyway, the kid should be hiding on one of his vantage points at the moment, and since their time in this town is coming to an end, he should spice things a bit, just so can have the best learning experience, of course. Naruto was sitting cross-legged in a roof with his notepad in his left and his pen on the right one. His notes done for the moment, he described the women, their actions, and it seemed that they were just relaxing there doing nothing. Speaking honestly, he was a bit bored. Sure, it was fun at first, but all the women in the hot spring were at least twice his age. And that seemed to be the trend on this town. No girls around his age, or maybe 1 or 2 years older. But the girls between 13 and 15 years old in this town don't seem to frequent the bathhouses often, which was a shame in his opinion. Involuntarily, his mind wandered, imagining a naked Sakura-chan in the bathhouse. Sure, her body wasn't much, but he still thought she was kind of cute. He knew that her boobies were not there yet, especially compared to those of the women he's been spying on, but she has room to grow. Literally, speaking of Sakura-chan, she would not go alone. He didn't know why, but he was sure that Ino would be with her. Yeah, the Yamanaka girl would be there too, and she certainly had an advantage in terms of development over Sakura-chan. Naruto cannot call himself an expert, but he was sure that his fellow blonde will grow to be better, proportionate than the pink-haired Kunoichi from his team. Hey, since the two were together, they would probably call Hinata as well, like a party, right? To celebrate, they all graduated the same year or something. But he couldn't quite imagine Hinata there. Out of the three, she was the one that concealed her appearance the most. He honestly had no idea how much she had developed. But she would definitely be there. It's a celebration, right? They would be washing each other's backs, maybe even playing in the water. Unlike his apprentice, Jiraiya had no difficulties finding his traveling companion. He could spot the blonde from a kilometer away, and getting close to him wasn't difficult either. The blonde was distracted, very distracted. He could see the blonde's face, and his expression was something else. He was looking at the sky instead of the bathhouse. He was smiling, and his mouth was slightly open. The expression was without a doubt one of a boy thinking of girls, naked girls. He was proud of the boy, prouder than ever in fact. Prouder than when the boy summoned Gamabunta. What he felt when the boy mastered the Rasengan was shame compared to how proud of the blonde he was at the moment. He almost regretted throwing the kid to the bathhouse in the middle of a horde of future angry women while yelling pervert, almost. But it was for his own good. Oh shit. That was the first thing on Naruto's mind after being thrown into the bathhouse. He landed in a very precarious way, and he was lucky to not have anything broken from the fall alone. His arms and legs were sore after absorbing the full force of the unexpected fall, but that was not what concerned him right now. No, what he perceived as imminent threat was the half a dozen naked and very angry women surrounding him. But the worst part was that one of them was holding his notepad reading his notes. Surely it was purely coincidental that she angriest of the women in the place. Get the little pervert. From his vantage point, Jiraiya was watching me as Naruto once again was running for his life, or trying to. He was too slow to react, and the women were all getting closer to him ready to catch him, and without any doubt, they would be teaching him a lesson. Jiraiya would be lying if he said that what he saw didn't surprise him a little. The blonde boy managed to escape rather easily in a burst of speed. What surprised him, though, was not the escape. No, it was his speed, or more specifically, the fact that he could not feel any chakra spike from the boy. He hammered that point into the blonde's mind. A good spy does everything on his power to avoid using chakra to remain undetected, if possible. Even escape must be done without any chakra, even if it is to further delay the enemy's response or alerting any possible sensor type in the vicinity. Sure, he was no sensor type, but there is no S-class shinobi in the world without some way to pick small chakra spikes, and he was S-class, meaning that the boy was that fast without the help of his chakra. That kind of speed is possible to develop relying on athletic ability alone. In fact, there are many shinobi that can go way faster than what the boy was currently capable of right now, but that kind of natural speed, even if short-lived, cannot be overlooked. Speed is lethal. The S-class shinobi he has met are all unique, with different styles, jutsus, and tactics. However, they're that one thing they all have: reflexes. Not all S-class are fast enough to disappear in the blink of an eye, but all of them can react to such speeds with faster-than-lightning reflexes. Reflexes are also the mark of a good defense, with the only exception he could think of being the Jinchuriki of the Ichibi and Suna, whose sand reacts automatically to any threat. Exceptions aside, reflexes are a must for every shinobi. They make the difference between life and death in the world. That's one of the reasons why the Sharingan was so feared during the Warring Clans era. Its natural ability to predict the enemy's moves gave the Uchiha clan a way to simulate faster reflexes. But a large enough gap between speed and reflexes will always nullify the defending side efforts. What good does you to see an attack coming if you cannot move fast enough to dodge it? That's what one of his students, Minato, thought. Minato focused heavily on his speed. He was fast. He could deliver a Rasengan on the back of his enemy's neck from 20 meters away, relying on his speed alone. That was before he finished the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Among the S-class shinobi alive today, AI, the current Raikage, was the one he wanted to fight the less. He would do everything possible to avoid entering conflict with such beast. Sarutobi-sensei knew just how dangerous AI is, and acted accordingly to avoid conflict with Kumo when they tried to kidnap that little Hyuga girl, as much as it pained him to admit it. Sacrificing Hyuga Hisashi was better than fighting a war with an enemy they wouldn't defeat. Speed is lethal. It may be worth a shot to see how much the blonde would react to some good old speed training. Jiraiya took out his trusty old map and checked their location. They were only a day away from River Country. That place has the perfect geography for a variety of trainings. Yes, they would go there next and spend a few weeks and see how Naruto's body reacts to this kind of training. Watching Naruto turn yet another corner, gaining distance from his pursuers, he smiled. It was time to hide. Let's see how long does it take him to find him on the library. After all, he would need something for the genin to read in the weeks they will spend on the wilderness of River Country. Naruto was hiding on an alley, making sure he was not followed, before taking to the roofs again. He had to get to the hotel and change into his yukata, get something to cover his hair, and then look for the old pervert. Damn you, Jiraiya, though. At first he didn't know what happened, but it didn't took him long to deduce that it was his master whom threw him into the bathhouse. He will find Jiraiya as it was expected of him after stealth training, and he was going to beat the shit out of him, but then he remembered that Jiraiya was a Sannin, a legendary shinobi, and the last time he tried to fight him, he ended up as his personal slave, and this is going to last 3 years? He had to find a way to get even with the old pervert, but physical violence was out of question. He would have to outsmart him or find some kind of weakness on his spare time. You know, when he was not being his slave, keeping his word for 3 years will most likely the hardest thing he has ever done in his life. Watching to the streets, he spotted one of the women looking for him. He immediately laid on his stomach to get out of her line of sight. He crawled to the edge of the roof, watching the woman walk away. He quickly jumped to the next roof and laid on his stomach again. He was 3 blocks away from the hotel. Maybe he could make a dash and get there without being found. Once in their shared room, Naruto changed into his yukata. It was different enough from his usual clothing to throw off any pursuers, but he still remembered that red-headed ramen chef. His blonde hair was rare in this city, and he was kind of famous now, so the women were looking for blonde hair as well. He could just use henge, but that would be using his chakra. He knew that in a civilian town like this, where the guards seemed to be all just a civilian militia force, he most likely would not be found. But that is not the point. He was training. He liked to pretend that this place was some enemy fortress filled with hostile shinobi, and shinobi would see right through his henge. Looking around the room, he looked for anything that could hide his hair. In a small table in the room, there was a vase, and underneath it, a simple white cloth, large enough to cover his hair. Perfect. He went into the bathroom and checked himself on the mirror. His yellow hair was almost totally covered, and he now looked different enough to pass for another person. He would still have to be careful, but now at least he could look out for Jiraiya without people chasing him. Cautiously walking on the streets, the blonde kept an eye out for his master while avoiding any angry-looking female. It wouldn't be the first time Jiraiya was just walking on the streets with a costume. He did his usual round around the bars, brothels, and restaurants, looking at every customer and every employee in those places. In the brothels, he lied about looking for his gramps and asking some patrons if they didn't saw someone with the description of Jiraiya. He thought of asking the girls too, but he was too ashamed to ask them directly. It was embarrassing enough to ask, "Have you seen an old man, tall white hair around here today?" And every time he asked, he was glad to receive a no or a "get lost, kid." A couple of times he received a yes and was pointed to a room in the place. He would go and stand near the closed door and hear all kind of strange noises. Sure, the moans from the girls were nice, but the voices of the old men he could hear mixed in were just disturbing. And what made it worse was that the old man in the room was never Jiraiya. Although, thinking about it, if Jiraiya did go out of the room, it would be the worst possible scenario. Yeah, that would be just too much. By the time he finished his round, he must have consumed at least 2 hours without finding the pervert. He really needed to get better at this, but he didn't really have any idea to find his sensei faster. He would have to ask him again. Deciding, he decided to go check the rest of public buildings in town. Maybe he would get some luck this time. Jiraiya sat for the last 4 hours on the same table on the library. He using his time to work on refining some of his notes and adapting them to fit into the story of his current literary project. It was still on development stage, so at the moment, he only have a bunch of separated erotic scenes. The plot of the story was undecided. It was always what took him the longest to write, as it was the frame book. He was having trouble getting inspiration lately without doing the research himself, but sacrifices must be made in hopes of a brighter future, and if the face of his student today was anything to go by, the future was bright. Speaking of his student, today he was taking his time finding him. He had the time to buy the books he needed in a bookstore and to come here to work on his own project. Going by his own estimations, the boy should have found him by now, and he was getting worried. While he doubted that the Akatsuki were actively looking out for them, they could always run into them. And the kid was definitely not ready for them. With a sigh of relief, he watched as the boy entered the building using his yukata and a cloth on his head. Approvingly, he nodded, watched as Naruto scanned everyone present, spotting him. Smiling, he raised his hand to confirm it was him. The blonde walked towards him and took a seat in the chair in front of him. It was easy to tell he was tired just looking at his face. Oh, and he was angry too. "Why did you had to throw in their arrow senin?" he asked, but he didn't raise his voice to attract attention from the people around them. "Because you were so distracted to even notice me in front of you, Naruto," he responded. "It was a nice fantasy at least," he asked. Maybe he could integrate it into his story if it was good enough. "What are you talking about? I was not fantasizing." This time some of the patrons there turned around and looked at the teenager. his face reddening probably from both the memory of the fantasy and the fact that he made an outburst in the library. Luckily for him, the library was a good place to have fantasies. Many of the patrons did fantasize on the books they read. It was not uncommon. So the people just smiled and went back to their books, and the people that not just looked up to the watch in the library, noticing how late it was getting and going back home. Not one of them was angry at the blonde. He was happy for that. I see you are unwilling to share. That's fine too, he said with a grin. Those are the things you have the right to keep private anyway. He pointed his index finger at the boy. But you were distracted while training. So tell me, kid, what would have happened if I was not your teacher, but an enemy shinobi, huh? Naruto had the decency to look ashamed at that. But you didn't have to throw me in there to make a point, damn it. He was still angry, it seems. How is that any worse than me throwing you on a cliff, kid? It was not his proudest moment as a teacher, but it should remind the boy that his style of teaching was not the most loving one among the Konoha shinobi. He should get used to it. They have barely started with the trip. You are the worst arrow senin. As Naruto said this, he rested his head on the back of his chair, relaxing a bit. It seems he was getting used to his methods. But could you at least give me some pointers? This is hard, and I'm not getting any better at finding you. I suppose there is no harm on it. So tell me, how have you been doing this? He asked. He was letting the boy come up with his own methods, but seeing as he was having little success, there is no harm on giving me a tip or two. I look around the places I think you could be. Naruto started looking around to see if someone was looking on his direction. You know, restaurants, bars, brothels. He had to smile at how he whispered that last word, clearly ashamed of just saying it. I check them. Look at the patrons, the staff. You know, all the people on them, he said in his normal tone of voice. I also look for you while on the streets, you know, just in case. At this point, the boy was getting frustrated and his voice was a bit louder. But that's it. I look for you until I find you and have no idea what else to do. Suppressing a chuckle, he smiled at the boy. He extended his hand and messed the boy's cloth a bit, much to his irritation. You have been doing well then, he said, gaining a disapproving look from the teenager. What do you mean I've been doing well? I can barely find you every day. Look, kid, it is not that you are doing it wrong. In fact, you have been doing a great job, he said, but it was clear that the blonde was not convinced, so he continued. Remember when we were looking for Tsunade? Seeing the blonde nod, he asked, where did we look for her? We went to bars, gamble dens, and casinos. Why? Because you said she liked to drink and gamble. Because with the information we had, we knew that those were the places she would most likely be in, kid, he pointed out. And that's exactly what you have been doing, isn't it? He paused for dramatic effect. There is no magic trick with this, kid. Even censor types struggle to find persons if they don't know them. And even they would do what you are doing. Use the info available to find the target. This is more about patience than skill, kid. So no pointers for me, he asked, lowering his head. Sorry, kid, but you don't fix what's not broken, he said with a smile. Now cheer up. We will be moving tomorrow. It's time for another kind of training. That seemed to cheer up the boy. Really? What kind of training will it be? You'll see, he said with a smile. It was still early in the morning when they checked out of their hotel room. Naruto was back on his normal clothes, except he was still using the white cloth to hide his yellow hair. It was something that he found practical, and he intended to keep until they left the town. No need to cause troubles on their way out. The phrase, "don't let the door hit your butt," came to his mind. If he never came back to this place again, it would be too soon. But he knew that the women of the city would be happy to know he was leaving, and he couldn't really blame them. It's not as if he could blame them either, or could do something about it. They were at the door of the hotel when an employee that looked around Jiraiya's age stopped the blonde with a hand on his shoulder. Excuse me, young man, but I think you are leaving with the property of our establishment, he said while pointing at Naruto's head. For a second, Naruto didn't know what the man was talking about. Then he understood that the man was talking about the cloth on his head. He immediately took it with one hand and offered it to the man. Sorry, I kind of forgot I took it, he said with a smile. He intended to take the cloth with him, but he really forgot that he didn't own said object. He wasn't trying to steal it. It's no problem, young man. Just see that it doesn't happen again, replied the man, with what he could clearly see was a fake smile, for he could see what he truly meant on his eyes. They had truly overstayed their welcome, or probably just Naruto. He guessed that by now. All the people of the town must have heard of him in some way or another. It didn't help that he was training rather close to the hotel most of the time. It was just a coincidence that the hotel was close to most of the hot springs and bathhouses in the city. Rumors about thieves and troublemakers tend to travel fast on commercial areas. Merchants talk among themselves and share information, and surely Shinobi doing stealth training and getting caught while doing it. It's information worth sharing. Great. Now he was a pariah here too. Jiraiya had an ear-to-ear grin on his face. He was sure that his teacher found their whole time here to be entertaining. He probably, though, it was hilarious to watch as angry women chasing him around the town. It was good to have you here, Horizon. The employee spoke again, his smile becoming real when facing the old man. I can't really imagine how hard it must be to raise such a troublemaker on your own. That caught Naruto's attention. What has the old pervert been babbling when he was out training? He is a good boy, Yamada-san. He is just going through that stage in life, Jiraiya said, putting his hand on his head. Now Naruto was really curious what tale his teacher has been spreading behind his back. It's true that all boys have some curiosity about the fairer sex around his age, but I never met a boy as curious as your grandchild. The moment Naruto heard this, his eyebrow started to tremble. So that was the old man's game, huh? I'm sure you are exaggerating, Yamada-san. Jiraiya seemed to find the situation hilarious if his hand patting him was anything to go by. I wish you a good journey, Jiraiya-san. Thank you, Yamada-san. I hope to see your business prosper. Neither Naruto nor Jiraiya said anything while they were walking to the west towards River Country, where they would be training the next few weeks. What was that back at the hotel, pervy sage? Naruto was really curious about that whole charade. You know, with your scandalous behavior, the people of the town had all kinds of complaints about you. And after that time we got you your new clothes, the townsfolk came to me to complain. I think I understand that, said Naruto. If both were trying to pass to civilians, it was only logical for them to be related, so what did you tell them? Oh, I just told them that you are at that age, Jiraiya said, while putting a hand on his head to mess with his hair. Age? And they believed you. Naruto found it strange that the townsfolk would accept such an excuse so easily. What has been 13 have to do with this? The sage looked at Naruto a bit confused himself. You know, 13. Age. This is the sort of things a child does when he grows older. You mean civilian kids peep on women when they turn 13? That was a surprise for the blonde. He really had no idea. What? Jiraiya laughed, messing his hair with more energetically this time. It's not only civilians, kid. Every kid between 12 and 14 start to notice girls or women, unless they have other tendencies, of course. The way Jiraiya explained this as if he was talking about something obvious was starting to get onto Naruto's nerves. Naruto hated when people talk like that, like he should just know things without anyone explaining it to him. And he would always be too ashamed to ask, "How do I know you are not making this up?" You don't make up facts of life, Naruto.